In June 2025, a podcast host named Dr. Mike read out a quote from Hugh Laurie's representatives on air. Hugh Laurie is not interested in opportunities like this, and frankly doesn't care about the audience or reliving the show. The quote went viral. Fans were offended, and then Noah Wiley, sitting right across from Dr. Mike, laughed and said, "That's so baller." That shift from outrage to respect happened within about 48 hours, because people eventually recognized that what Hugh Laurie had done was not cruelty. It was a man being completely, uncompromisingly himself, which is, if you think about it, exactly what Gregory House would have done. This is the real story of why House ended and what it actually costs to play the smartest, most contemptuous man on American television for 8 years straight, on a different continent from your family, while quietly dealing with depression that no award ceremony ever acknowledges. James Hugh Calum Laurie was born on June 11, 1959, in Oxford, England. His father, known as Ran, was a doctor and an Olympic gold medalist. He won the rowing event at the 1948 London Games. The weight of that legacy is not incidental. Growing up as the son of an Olympian physician in Oxford means excellence is not an aspiration, it is a baseline. Hugh followed his father into rowing, and at Eton he was good enough that he and his partner became the 1977 National Junior Coxed Pairs champions and finished fourth at the World Junior Championships. At Cambridge the following year, illness forced him to withdraw from competition. The athletic path closed. He found the Cambridge Footlights instead, and in the Footlights he found Stephen Fry. The Fry and Laurie partnership is one of those creative relationships that resists full explanation to minds whose specific wavelengths happen to produce something neither could produce alone. A bit of Fry and Laurie, Jeeves and Wooster, in which Laurie played Bertie Wooster, the warm-hearted, gloriously useless aristocrat, with such transparent delight that people who loved those shows spent years afterward struggling to reconcile that Bertie with the acid-tongued Gregory House. He also appeared in 2 series of Blackadder alongside Rowan Atkinson, playing a succession of cheerful idiots with the kind of comic precision that makes cheerful idiocy look deceptively easy. By the mid-1990s, he had written a novel, The Gunseller, published in 1996, a comic thriller that became a bestseller and that he has not followed up in the 3 decades since, despite signing a contract for a second book with his publisher. He also appeared in 2 series of Blackadder, alongside Rowan Atkinson Prince George in the Regency period series. Then George, the cheerful junior officer in the World War I series, playing variations on the same comic archetype, the well-meaning, entirely useless man who is lovable precisely because he has no idea how limited he is. These were performances of a specific kind of warm stupidity that requires, paradoxically, considerable intelligence to get right. You have to understand exactly what the character does not understand. Laurie understood it completely. When the final episode of Blackadder Goes Forth aired in November 1989, the one where all 4 characters go over the top to almost certain death, and the comedy gives way to something irreversible, Laurie's face in those final moments is the face of someone who has been playing a fool and has suddenly been asked to show what the fool actually feels. It is, for about 30 seconds, one of the most quietly devastating performances in British comedy. He had also been dealing with depression for years before House arrived. He first sought professional help in 1996. He has spoken about it with a directness that the English tradition of emotional reticence does not usually permit, saying that he is comfortable as a pessimist, that if he does not have a stone in his shoe, he will put one in there. He was, in other words, already in certain ways the ideal vessel for Gregory House. What he was not prepared for, what almost nobody is prepared for, regardless of how famous they already were, was the specific texture of American fame. Being celebrated in Britain, where the television landscape is smaller and the celebrity culture operates with somewhat more restraint, is categorically different from being listed in the Guinness World Records as the most watched leading man on Earth. He has said at various points that the scale of House's success surprised him, that he had thought it would be a decent American job, and that he would return to British comedy. Instead, he found himself unable to buy his own groceries in Los Angeles, constantly worried about saying the wrong thing in public, recognized everywhere he went in a country of 330 million people. He managed it, but managing it and enjoying it are different things. When David Shaw created House MD in 2004, he was building a character for a specific cultural moment. The mid-2000s had just produced The Sopranos and The Wire, television's great reckoning with the morally complicated protagonist. House was the medical version. He was brilliant, cruel, addicted to Vicodin, contemptuous of patients as people, while being obsessed with them as diagnostic problems, and possessed of a limp from a misdiagnosed infarction that left him in chronic pain. The audition that won Laurie the role took place not in Los Angeles, but in a hotel bathroom in Namibia, where he was filming another project. He set up a digital camera because the light was better in there. He sent the tape. Shaw and the producers watched it, and the conversation was over. They called him. He was not expecting the call. He moved to Los Angeles. His family, wife Jo, and their 3 children remained in London. For 8 years he lived 9 months of the year on a different continent from his wife and children. He flew home when production allowed. He returned to a city that was not his, to an apartment without his family in it, to play every day a character whose defining quality was his refusal to connect with other people. He turned to therapy. A 2013 Radio Times interview caught him in an unusually candid moment. Fame had become a burden, he said. He was constantly worried about saying the wrong thing. He could not buy his own groceries anymore. He said this not with resentment, but with the tone of someone reporting a condition. Here is what the job produced. Here is what it cost. The limp was real eventually. By the later seasons, Laurie had been performing House's affected gait for so long that he started to do it automatically between takes, walking with the limp through the studio lot, catching himself in the parking structure on his way to and from set. The character had colonized his physical memory. He mentioned it in interviews with the careful understatement of someone reporting an odd symptom. He consulted a physiotherapist. The physiotherapy worked, but the fact that it was necessary tells you something about the depth of the commitment and the price that kind of commitment extracts over 8 years. The show's identity was built on a paradox that Laurie navigated every day for 8 years. House was the most watched character on American television, precisely because he was designed to be unlikable. The Guinness World Records listed Laurie as the most watched leading man on television in 2011, with the show airing in 66 countries simultaneously at its peak. 66 countries watching a man be actively cruel to patients, lie to colleagues, steal prescription drugs, and periodically destroy the people who loved him. The audience kept coming back because Laurie made the intelligence underneath the cruelty visible. You could see House thinking. You could see the mechanism. And somewhere in the precision of that thinking was something that looked obliquely like care not for people, but for truth, for getting the diagnosis right, even when everyone else was satisfied with an easier answer. Laurie held all of that simultaneously for 177 episodes and made it look effortless in the way that only genuinely difficult things do. One of the show's recurring structural tensions was the casting around him. Jennifer Morrison's departure after season 6, and then Lisa Edelstein's, who played Cuddy, House's boss and complicated love interest, and who left before the final season due to a contract dispute that the network resolved by cutting her loose rather than paying her left holes that the show acknowledged imperfectly. 7 years of House-Cuddy relationship building ended by a licensing fee negotiation. Laurie has spoken about Edelstein's departure with the careful diplomacy of an actor who knows better than to publicly criticize a network decision. The restraint itself is telling. The end of House was not, as some outlets reported in 2012, primarily about Laurie being exhausted. He pushed back on that framing specifically. He released a statement saying he loved his job and worked harder at it than most journalists work at theirs. He was right that the full story was more complicated. Fox was paying $5 million per episode and wanted a meaningful reduction in the show's license fee from Universal Television, which produced it. Universal was willing to negotiate, but not as far as Fox wanted. The network was also offering a final 13-episode order, while Universal wanted 22. Fox Entertainment president Kevin Riley admitted in January 2012, "We have just been avoiding it, to be honest with you." New shows Alcatraz Touch had given Fox options. With those in hand, letting House go became easier than the negotiation required to keep it. Here is the detail that changes the narrative. Hugh Laurie was prepared to take a pay cut to return. The highest paid dramatic actor on American television, earning $700,000 per episode, was willing to work for less because he wanted to give the character a proper ending on his own terms. He and Shaw and producer Katie Jacobs had been pushing both parties since the previous autumn for a definitive answer, because the show needed to know whether it was writing toward a finale or a renewal. You cannot build a meaningful ending for a character as specific as Gregory House if you do not know until the last moment whether you are writing one. Shaw, Jacobs, and Laurie had wanted to wrap House up on their own terms, but they faced a catch-22. Either aim for a renewal and risk not getting a proper series closer, or push for a finale and shut the door on another season. They got the finale. House fakes his death to spend the last weeks of his best friend Wilson's life. Wilson is dying of cancer, with him on motorcycles outside the hospital, outside the institutional machinery that had defined House's entire adult existence. The final image is 2 men riding. Laurie called it an unforgettable part of his life. He meant it. He also meant, apparently, that he was done with it. After House, Laurie did something that felt initially like a detour and turned out to be exactly what he needed. He went to New Orleans and made a blues album. Let Them Talk, released in 2011 while House was still in production, was recorded with musicians who had no particular interest in accommodating a famous British actor, and who took him seriously because he was serious. He played piano and guitar and sang in a voice that critics described as weathered. He toured. He played small venues by choice, not because he couldn't fill larger ones, but because the blues is not stadium music, and he knew it. A second album, Didn't It Rain, followed in 2013 after the show ended. He has said that music is the part of his life he is least able to explain, which is probably why it matters so much. Gregory House played piano. It was one of the character's few moments of genuine openness. The overlap between the character and the man was not accidental. He also had a recurring role in Veep, Armando Iannucci's HBO political comedy, as Tom James, a silver-tongued politician of impeccable charm and flexible principle who arrives in the Veep's orbit and immediately begins rearranging it to his own advantage. It was a small role by the standards of his career, but a reminder of something that the House years had partly obscured: Laurie's specific gift for playing men who are performing competence and goodwill while pursuing an entirely private agenda. Tom James was Roper before Roper, smaller in scale, sharper in comic timing, the kind of supporting character who steals scenes without appearing to try. Iannucci clearly understood what he had and used it accordingly. Then came the work that demonstrated for anyone still uncertain exactly who Hugh Laurie was outside the House framework. In 2016, he played Richard Roper in The Night Manager, the BBC adaptation of John le Carré's novel, a charming alms dealer whose performance of civilized elegance conceals a ruthlessness that Laurie deployed with the specific pleasure of an actor who has found a villain who operates entirely differently from his previous one. Where House was contemptuous in the open, Roper was contemptuous behind a warm smile. Different instrument, same musician. The performance earned him a second BAFTA nomination and reminded British audiences that the Hollywood years had not changed what he fundamentally was. In 2019, he appeared as Mr. Dick in the personal history of David Copperfield, Armando Iannucci's adaptation of Dickens. The film was a critical success and a particular kind of pleasure for people who had missed Laurie in purely comic mode. He played the eccentric, gentle, enthusiastic Mr. Dick with a warmth that was, after years of House's cold precision, almost shocking. He had not lost the thing. He had just been keeping it somewhere else. In 2020, he became executive producer and star of Avenue 5 for HBO, a comedy about a space cruise ship captain whose passengers are stranded 96 million miles off course and who must maintain the performance of competence while being privately uncertain about most things. The show ran for 2 seasons and found a devoted following among people who appreciated that Laurie was essentially playing the inverse of Gregory House, a man who performs confidence while hiding incompetence, rather than a man who demonstrates competence while hiding pain. Both are performances. Laurie understands both. And then, in 2025, he became Dumbledore. Audible's Harry Potter full-cast audio edition cast him as Professor Albus Dumbledore, the 4th actor to take on the role after Richard Harris, Michael Gambon, and Jude Law. When Variety asked him about it, he said, "Before you reel in amazement, I will have to confess to you that I did not read the books." He said this completely seriously, which made it funnier than any self-aware joke could have been. He was cast as Dumbledore, having not read a single Harry Potter novel. He was curious about the character anyway. He read the relevant sections. He did the work. That is, if you know anything about Hugh Laurie, the most Hugh Laurie sentence in this story. In 2026, Hugh Laurie is 66 years old. He was awarded an OBE in 2007 and elevated to CBE in 2018, which are the kinds of honours that the British establishment confers on people it has decided to stop being surprised by. He lives between England and wherever the work takes him. His wife Jo, to whom he has been married since 1989, through the Blackadder years, through the Fry and Laura years, through 8 years of House, through everything, is still there. 3 children, now adults, the family that stayed in London while he was in Los Angeles for 9 months a year for nearly a decade. He has said he could not have asked them to move for the sake of a television series. He has also said that the separation was one of the genuine costs of those years, one of the things that made the job harder than the job itself was. The podcast rejection of June 2025 was not, as the initial coverage suggested, callousness. It was Hugh Laurie being exactly himself. He doesn't want to be House MD, the representative said. Not for a podcast. Not for a reunion. Not for a reboot. The role was real when it was real. It is finished now. He has spent 40 years being multiple different things and has never, as far as anyone can tell, been entirely comfortable with the idea that any one of them defines him. Gregory House could not have agreed more. The character who spent 8 seasons insisting that everyone wears a mask, that the performance of identity is the fundamental human activity, was played by a man who has spent his entire career being several different things, and who has refused, with quiet consistency, to let any single one of them be the final word. The bumbling aristocrat, the Blackadder fool, the blues musician, the novelist who hasn't written the second novel, the most watched dramatic actor in the world, the man who cannot buy his own groceries, the man who turned down a podcast and said frankly doesn't care and meant it and was right to mean it. Bertie Wooster would have been mortified by Gregory House. Gregory House would have had no patience for Bertie Wooster. And somewhere in the gap between them is the actual Hugh Laurie, 66 years old CBE, still putting the stone in the shoe, still finding that the stone is the point. What do you think of Hugh Laurie's story and the real reasons House came to an end? Leave us your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.